Oh, and what is up, YouTube? My name is G3 Iron, and today we are doing a build guide review where we are helping out one of our lovely Patreons, Debrians. So welcome to the channel and welcome to our Patreon family, Debrian. Thanks so much for your support. Debrian is one of our G3 heroes, so just got to give him a shout out. He gets his own special place in the G3 Hall of Heroes on our Discord server, and he's really awesome in terms of the support that he's providing for the channel, which he put us to our goal of 5 out of 5 patrons, which is pretty exciting. Our next stretch goal is, I think, 7, and then we're doing a giveaway for G3 mousepad at that point, and then we'll do a G3 t-shirt, I think, at 10. And then I've got to come up with more goals because we're actually hitting these goals in a relatively quick amount of time. So that's pretty exciting. So thanks again so much, DeBrian, for your support. So let's jump right in to your build. This is the path of building that Debrian has passed along. A little bit of background from Debrian himself. He plays mostly softcore for the last couple of years that he's been playing Path of Exile, and he really wants to get into the mechanics and learn more about the game, and so he's migrated and started playing in hardcore this particular league. And so right now he is playing a double strike champion, and this is what he's got planned out. This is primarily a bleed gladiator. So really quickly, we're going to go over what he's got and then give some suggestions over what can improve. So this is a bleed gladiator that is going to focus on versatile combatant. So chance to block spell damage is equal to chance to block attack damage, and maximum chance to block spell damage is equal to maximum chance to block attack damage, which is really great. Because if you block damage, it doesn't come through, doesn't hit you at all. You don't have to worry about mitigating that damage. It just doesn't exist on your character. Pain Forge, which gives you +8 chance to block attack damage if you were damaged by a hit recently. And then 40% increased damage if you've taken no damage from hits recently. Cannot be stunned by hits you block, and your counterattacks deal double damage. Over in his Uber Ascendancy, he's got Blood in the Eyes. Attacks have 25% chance to cause bleeding. Attacks Maim on hit against bleeding enemies. 10% chance to blind with hits against bleeding enemies. And enemies maimed by you take 10% increased physical damage. Attacks from Gratuitous Violence also have 25% chance to cause bleeding. 30% increased damage with hits and ailments against bleeding enemies. Bleeding enemies you kill explode, dealing 10% of their maximum life as physical damage and 25% more damage with bleeding. That's a ton, and as you can see from the setup right here, POB is giving us a grand total of about 5.3 thousand DPS off of this single Ascendancy node, with about 4,800 bleed DPS, which is about 23% of his bleed DPS in sum total. So that's his Ascendancy. Of course, he's a duelist, and the way how he's got it pathed right now is starting out coming down through Art of the Gladiator, coming over grabbing Master of the Arena, coming all the way down, probably filling out with Golem's Blood is probably how you would level this, and then eventually coming over grabbing Splitting Strikes if you want to level continually with axes. And then you're pretty much just headed all the way up to the top of the tree as quickly as you can to get to Resolute Technique, so that way your hits won't be evaded, because you're not going to depend on crits as you're leveling and progressing through the story, which is great. It's going to provide you a lot of consistency, whether or not you're leveling with Sun, or whether or not you're leveling with something like Earthquake at level 28, or if you're leveling with something like Cleave, or even leveling with something like Double Strike, which is going to be your main end game. All of those are going to be options which are going to be bolstered quite significantly by Resolute Technique. Then you're probably going to come over and want some survivability coming through the Silent Life Wheel, and then you'll just start filling out the bare bones of the rest of the tree. That's pretty much the tree as he's got it right now. A couple of things that I would just say right here off of the bat to you, Debrian. A couple of things to think about. There are some pathing options that you've got going on here. So, for instance, if you really want to invest heavily into the bleed stuff, which you're a max block gladiator that's dependent on bleed for your damage, totally get that. I think it's an awesome playstyle. I played one of these, not in hardcore, but in softcore. I want to say that was back in Incursion. It might have been Bestiary. I would need to go back and look. But I love Gladiator. When I got to play Gladiator, it was very, very strong. It might have even been Delve. But really, really strong. Really, really fun playstyle. Not getting hit because you're simply, I mean, technically you are getting hit, but not taking damage because you're blocking everything is really, really satisfying to see. So if one of the ways that you are going to deal damage is going to be through bleed, and you really want to be committed to bleed, that's okay. But realize that there's some more optimal pathing that you can choose, or maybe there's some, maybe not necessarily optimal pathing, maybe this is the optimal build that you've already got figured out, but if you'd like alternatives or maybe some other options, here's at least some ways to do it. So you can bring these passives that are down here, this linking corridor. We often like to refer to these as like spines or the backbone of a build, right? That you've got to travel through these corridors in order to come get the keynodes that you're going to use. You can actually bring this corridor down to this bottom row of corridor, and it'll really help you pick up points like Iron Grip, or not Blood Magic, but Red Storm. Those would be the two that I was thinking of that would be most beneficial for your build. So you're still going to have access to Bloodless because you're going to move the corridor from running along this bunch of 10 strength nodes to this bunch of 10 strength nodes all the way down here near Blood Magic, near Iron Grip, and then near this Jewel node. You can bring all of these passive points down and simply have them run and connect all along through here. You have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 passives, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 passives. It's not too much for you to think about as one additional passive point to invest. And again, you can move some of those passive points around. You wouldn't necessarily have to come in here where you'd have the +1 chance to block, but since chance to block is your primary defense, I would leave that. I would keep all of that here, and the rest of your tree is going to look pretty great. Now, the options that opens up for you, if you want to make yourself available for more options, is to come and grab these passives just outside of Red Storm, which give you 20% increased damage with bleeding. You can see from the POB numbers, this would increase your bleed DPS by 2.7%. Going another one would increase by another 2.7%, and going all the way up to a Red Storm, your DPS goes from 7,700 on the average damage all the way up to 8k. So that is, just so that way you know, I have a point of comparison, you're up from, what is that, 7,700, so 7,700 all the way up to 8,000. So it's a decent chunk of damage right there for just a few passive points. And again, you're not going to have to allocate this one. It's only 3 points away, essentially, if you redo this line of stats here, and you can still come in and get yourself Bloodless without having to come grab these 2 5%ers. You can grab those 2 5%ers if you want, but if you're starved for passives, if you feel like, hey, this is already a tree for level 95, I'm probably not going to hit that, that's fine. You can go for it a little bit earlier. That will significantly increase your bleed damage if bleed is the way that you'd like to go. Also, a second theme for you. So first off, there's ways to maximize your bleed damage on the passive tree. Second off, there are ways for you to increase your damage out of jewel sockets. So I just did a really quick search here for jewels. If you can look here, here are the available jewel sockets that you've got versus the jewel sockets that you've taken. You've taken one jewel socket up here. This is a pretty decent looking gem or jewel socket. 11% increased melee damage, attack speed, increased physical damage with one-handed weapons, and then increased global physical damage. That's great. That's fantastic. That's the sort of jewel that you're looking for. That's great. This is probably going off of a prototype that you found off of another build. That's great. These are good-looking gems for you. No complaints here. The only complaint that you might have, since you're playing hardcore, is that this might actually be too offensively oriented. You might want this to be something that's got life on it. Instead of one of these offensive abilities. But rolling a jewel that's got 4 offensive stats on it is going to be probably pretty expensive to do, whether that's hardcore or softcore, and it'll get more expensive in softcore if you're going for one of these with 3 offensive categories plus 1 maximum life roll or increased life roll, depending on whether or not that's an abyss jewel or a regular jewel. But those are options for you. You've only got 2 jewel sockets right now that you do have on the passive tree. You've got numerous options to come grab more. You can come grab one near Resolute Technique. This is a 3-pointer that gives you increased armor. I did notice that you came up and you wanted some increased armor over here with combat stamina, so that's fine. That gives you a ton of armor and a little bit of regen. That's great. You're getting 15% armor here off of 1 passive point, but really the way to look at this is it's 15% over these 2 passive points, and then you get an additional, 5% life and 20% armor. So you're getting 35% armor off of 3 passive nodes, right, from coming off of this particular stem or spine of the build. So that's great, right? When you look at it in terms of value, you're going, hey, this is only 8%, 8% times 2, 16%. It's not nearly as much, right? But then you're going to get a jewel socket that potentially is going to add a whole bunch of opportunities for you to add either increased life or flexibility to increase damage if you need it. So jewel sockets are very, very powerful. I see a lot of players oftentimes not valuing their jewel sockets to be enough to go grab them. If you don't like this 3-pointer, okay, let me introduce you to our 2-pointer down here right underneath stamina for an additional endurance charge. This is another great one, and it's only 2 points away from your current tree, and it'll remain only 2 points away even if you bring your tree down and come along that southern spine or southern channel of the tree. So that's only a 2-pointer. That's already giving you 2 additional sockets, and that can give you a serious increase if you're looking for more jewels that are like this crimson jewel that you've got here. That'll really increase your damage. That's what are each of these jewels hypothetically giving you? It's giving you what? 4.2% attack damage, and then a significant amount of increased damage on your total DPS, 5.7%. So another 5.7%, you know, if you reallocate some passives and you get 2 more jewel slots, that's 10% damage that you can have increased on your total DPS. That could be really, really, really nice if you're able to do that, to see an increase in your damage. Okay, some other things to take note of in this build. So that's just a couple things on the passive tree. Up here you've got Sanctuary, which is +3 chance to block spell damage. Totally makes sense. You're going with the max block Gladiator. Coming up, grabbing Devotion, max life, and then increased effective non-curse auras, and then 20 strength. Okay, makes sense. But look up here, you've got another jewel socket that you can come grab. This is, yes, 1, 2, 3 away, but you can grab it. Down here towards the bottom, if you rearrange your passive tree such that you're coming along this southern channel, then guess what? You've got 4% increased melee damage, 4% increased damage with ailments from attack skills while wielding a melee weapon, which will apply to you, and you're going to get another one of those, and then you've got it, another jewel socket. So without going too far out of your way, just by restructuring some of your already in place structure that you've got for a level 95 tree, you've got potentially 1, 2, 3, 4 more jewel sockets that can really boost your damage, as well as boost your survivability. So I'm not telling you have to do that, right? That's just a suggestion. Jewel sockets are often undervalued, and it's something to think about if you've got extra room to go and grab it. When it comes to your items, this is the third thing. So, third thing to chat about, items. You are running with a Bringer of Rain. I think Bringer of Rain is a very fun item. I am saying this to you as lovingly and as kindly as I can. Don't do it. I'm really trying to be helpful here. It's great as a starter item. It's great if it drops for you and you're just getting started in a league and you're just leveling with it. It's a pseudo 7-link, right? So it's very, very strong in that regard. It adds a lot of flat physical damage. You can see it's going to be 36% lost damage if you take it off right now. That being said, this single slot item is taking up both your helmet and your chest piece. And we live in an environment now where 210 life on your helm might be good, but you can get a helmet that's got 100 life on it, and you can get a chest piece that's got easily another 100 life on it, and then it's going to have a bunch of other stats. Your chest piece can then be a 6-link that's not capped at level 18, being a 7-link that's capped with 3 of the gems being capped at level 18. You can then go for a 6-link that potentially adds more gem levels to your particular support gems as well as your active gems. Like, there's just a lot more that you can do if you're using a 6-link body armor. And even if you're not using a 6-link body armor, there are some ways that you can set this up to actually be a 5-link body armor and still do more damage, as well as be more tanky in terms of the total amount of maximum life that you're going to have, as well as armor. The amount of armor from Bringer of Rain is really, really strong. You've got this one here, as the example, has got almost 600 armor. That being said, that's a pretty poorly rolled chest piece. And then, again, for helms, you can get helms that are anywhere in between 150 to 250 armor, no problem. So between a chest piece and between your helmet, you should be sitting somewhere roughly around 1,000 armor, no problem whatsoever. So that's just some thought. That's just some food for thought. It's not saying you have to do it. If you're really attached to Bringer of Rain, that's great. Keep it. If you've already acquired a Bringer of Rain and that's why you're using it, that's great. Keep it. The next item to really look at and see that there's an opportunity for improvement is your Soul Taker. So your Soul Taker is great because it allows you, of course, to attack without having sufficient mana, which, of course, means that you can just simply go balls to the walls with all of your auras and really min-max the amount of auras that you're using. That's great. But in terms of your damage, you are really capped here for the Soul Taker and for the amount of damage that you're doing. And because you're an axe and board character, it means that you're not dual wielding. You're losing a lot of offensive capability there. So I feel like some of your build might be struggling in terms of its damage right here, your average damage, because you're using a Soul Taker, not necessarily because you're using an axe plus a shield. So one example, and this is linked down below in the video description, is just for you to go and look at a customized search for one-handed axes in Hardcore Synthesis League, and you're going to be able to pick up some really nice looking DPS one-handers for anywhere in between 10 chaos or less, because melee is not very meta right now, and because not many people like playing melee, even if it was meta right now. It is very, very cheap to deck out a melee character. So that's the good news about playing the Gladiator, is that this is probably going to be a very cheap and very cost-efficient build. The jewels are probably going to be the most expensive single thing, along with potentially a top-end chest piece and a top-end helmet. Nonetheless, it's very, very doable for you to go into. So that's where I would prioritize your purchases as you're looking next, is prioritizing getting a decent chest. Again, you don't need to look for some massive top-end 15 Exalted chest piece. You don't even need to look for a 6-link. You can look for a really good rare and then purchase. This is a trick that a lot of people don't know about, but you can look for a really good rare, get the Jeweler's Touch Prophecy, which will 5-link an item with the prophecy using just one jeweler. And it's awesome. That's usually anywhere between like 25 to 40 C. It just depends on the meta and the availability of that particular prophecy. But you can get a really, really bonkers, awesome, rare chest piece. And maybe you spend 1 or 2 C on it. Maybe you spend 10 C on it. But then you go out and you spend the bulk of your money on the Jeweler's Touch Prophecy. And then you apply that to your chest piece. And now what was a chest piece that might have cost you if you simply purchased it off the market as a 5-link, maybe an Exalt or more, you got it for less than half of that price, simply because you were willing to put in the time and the effort and the research to get something that was great, that fit for your build in terms of your life, your resistances, your defensive needs, or maybe even your offensive needs. If you really wanted to splurge, you can simply go for attacks will maim on hit. Or supported attacks linked. Yeah, support socketed skills. I believe the mod reads socketed skills are supported by level 1 maim on hit. I believe that's a pretty expensive mod to purchase. It is a Shaper Elder mod that you're going to have to look for, but that's a really, really great one. If you can find somebody that hasn't 6-linked it or 6-socketed it and then simply purchase that with a little bit of life on it, that's really great, because that's your essential pseudo 7-link, and you're going to be maiming stuff, which is great, which is going to add to your defensive and offensive abilities, because stuff's going to die, stuff's going to be bleeding, you're going to take less damage. It's great. Okay, so in terms of skills, this is the last thing. You've got your double strike. It is linked up with chance to bleed. Excellent. Multi-strike, ruthless, and ancestral call. The only thing that I would say here is that you've got the right setup in terms of setting things up for a 5-link. You're prepped for a 5-link. Just be thinking whether or not you eventually want to go with full-on just physical, or if you want to add some elemental damage into your build. Because with Ruthless, you've got every third attack supported by attacks deal a Ruthless blow, but you can also do Brutality, which Brutality, yes, let's just take a look here really quickly. When we add in Brutality, your damage goes up to, what is that, 10,000? So Brutality, it simply says deal no chaos damage, no elemental damage, but your supported skills deal a ton more physical damage. So that's just an option if you wanted to take off either Ancestral Call. I understand that Ancestral Call is really, really great because of the clear that it provides for you, and I understand that Ruthless is really great because of the bleeding that it causes. Multi-strike, I would probably take off multi-strike. Multi-strike, again, is probably just another quality of life thing, which if you take it off, you see your damage skyrockets because multi-strike hampers your damage. But anyway, there's a lot of quality of life that goes along with multi-strike. But if I was playing this build, this would be the 5-link setup that I personally would use, especially since multi-strike, for me, when I'm playing hardcore, multi-strike roots me in place for, it doesn't matter how long, for any longer than I want it to is too much. And so I very rarely play anything with multi-strike. That's my playstyle. It's not necessarily your playstyle, but that's just an option for you. And the DPS, again, shows it. You go up to 15,000 average damage here with this setup, as opposed to going for the multi-strike setup. So that's just something to keep in mind. Also, of course, I noticed in this particular build that you do not have, you've got Tempest Shield, Summon Stone Golem, Ancestral Protector, Shield Charge, Warlord's Mark, Arctic Armor, and then Double Strike. You don't have linked a setup for, is it Purity? Is it Herald of Purity, I believe is what it is? I think that's what it's called. Herald of Purity. Yeah, there we go. So if you set up a Herald of Purity, that skyrockets your damage even more, where we've got, if we don't have it enabled, I mean, that's 12,000 damage right there if you've got a Herald of Purity active. it adds flat physical damage. So that's another thing that you can do just in your gem setups that can hopefully provide your damage the boost that it's needed. So right here, all we've done, I haven't changed any weapons. I've just changed a few gems around. I haven't changed any of the items, haven't changed any of the passives, haven't added in all of these other gems that are possible, and your skill damage average hit has already doubled. So hopefully that's helpful to you, Debrian. Hopefully those are some thoughts for you at least to converse with and to interact with as you are filling out and building out this character. Since you are playing hardcore, I will wish you luck. I hope this character makes it as far as level 95 like you've got planned out here, and I hope that everything goes well as you swap these things around and as you're looking for potentially more jewel sockets, as you're looking for potentially duplicating those jewels that you've got, and as you're looking for upgrades in those various items. Again, I've got 2 searches for you down below in the video description that you can simply click on, and it'll pull up hardcore searches, one for chess pieces and the other is for DPS weapons. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, Debrian. Those of you who are not Debrian, feel free to leave a comment down below and give our buddy some help out and some suggestions. I'm sure I missed stuff on here. The paste bin is going to be linked down below in the video description, so if you guys would like to pull it up and play around with it and give feedback to our buddy Debrian, you can do that. Of course, that is always welcome, and I appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. And Debrian, I hope today is the day that you find a Mirror of Calandra right after you import all of this wonderful stuff into Path of Exile.
Nice patrons, yes, good patrons. They're so kind and supportive.
I can't believe you watched that thing. That was good job. You did it. You got through the whole video. Yay.